Welcome to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ryan Matthews. The future of any organization depends on the investment of young leaders. That's why at Ohio Farm Bureau, the recruitment and empowerment of our young leaders is a priority. On this episode of the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast, we'll get the chance to chat with one of our state Young Ag Professional Committee members about the upcoming Winter Leadership Experience, along with our Executive Vice President, Adam Sharp, to chat about a recent trip to DC that many of our Young Ag Professionals and AgriPOWER members got to take. That's coming up after this.
At AgCredit, we've been proudly providing support and financing for agriculture in rural Ohio for generations. As a local farmer-owned cooperative, we value our members and work to supply the best service possible while offering competitive products and solutions. Solutions that support the next generation getting started, ones that help operations grow, and others to aid with transitions. To apply online or find the location nearest you, visit us at agcredit.net. AgCredit, committed to agriculture, committed to you.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. Every January, the Ohio Farm Bureau's State Young Ag Professional Committee puts on the Winter Leadership Experience. This is an opportunity for young ag professionals to hone in on their personal and professional skills, connect with other young ag professionals, and also get a chance to learn more about how they can have an impact for their community, for Farm Bureau, and agriculture. Emily Warnemont, Vice Chair of our State Young Ag Professionals Committee, joins us to give us an inside scoop for the 2026 Winter Leadership Experience. Welcome to the podcast, Emily.
Thanks, Ryan, for having me.
Absolutely. Now, whether it's someone's first time going to Winter Leadership Experience, or someone just needs a refresher, can you just walk us through everything that kind of happens at WLE?
Yes, so WLE, or Winter Leadership Experience, is hosted by the Young Ag Professionals State Committee for Ohio Farm Bureau. So other like-minded individuals, we get together for a day and a half of programming, education, and just connection with a lot of other professionals in our industry within the state of Ohio. And it's always a good time to connect with others and learn about new technologies and innovations going on in our industry, but also throwing in a little bit of leadership development skills as well.
Now, can you tell us what's new or different about the 2026 Winter Leadership Experience?
Yeah, so we're very excited. We're going to be in Newark, Ohio at Cherry Valley Hotel. That's the first time we've ever had the conference there. So we're super excited about that space. And then we're also bringing back keynote speakers, which we've kind of stayed away from the last few years and focused more on breakouts. But we're going to try and bring that back again this year. So we have Coach Kai, who's a major influencer on social media and really has an upbeat, great message that she's going to share with us Friday night. And then Jim Schwartz, who's an agronomist, is going to join us Saturday at lunchtime. So I'm really excited about keynote speakers that we're going to implement back into the conference. And we've got a whole slew of breakouts that it's going to be really hard to choose from on which one you go to.
Sounds like a fantastic lineup. Now, the theme next year is Harvesting New Horizons. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you and your fellow committee members?
Yeah, and I think what's really neat about this theme is it's different for everybody, right? If you are a full-time farmer or just full-time ag professionals, Harvesting New Horizons has a different meaning. And that's what's so great about this conference is that it brings a lot of people together, and you're just going to take so much information back to your everyday life and implement it into your operation, into your careers. And so you're harvesting new horizons. It gives you a new opportunity, a new outlook, and hopefully some growth potential in whatever it is your goals are.
Now, Emily, this is your second year on the committee, and a big part of your time and service and a lot of energy of the Young Ag Professionals Committee is this Winter Leadership Experience. Can you tell us a little bit about what all goes into hosting the conference?
Yes, so our committee, we basically start a whole year in advance of planning the next conference. So as soon as we're done with one WLE, we're starting to think about the next one. And part of that is picking a venue, which we already have the 27 one I think narrow down. Can't say where it's going to be, but that's how far in advance we're planning. And then usually the spring ahead of the conference, which is almost a full, we're putting together speakers, we're lining up breakouts, that sort of thing, just so we can get the best of the best at our conference and then start promoting those people out, and hopefully get a large group there to enjoy all that we've put together.
Awesome. And to round us out here, Emily, will you share what your favorite part of WLE is?
Yeah, that's very hard. I really enjoy, I mean, it's just a great weekend to connect and meet new people. And as I mentioned before, the learning aspect is really cool because it's not just one sector of our industry, it's a whole gamut. But from somebody that's, I'm wrapping up my time on the committee, it's just a lot of fun to see our ideas come to life and then see all of our attendees really enjoying it and see everybody experience what we've put together. I think that's been a huge highlight for me, and I know my fellow committee members really enjoy that too. And so getting to see everything come to life and everybody enjoy it has been one of my favorite parts since being on the committee.
Emily Warnemont, Vice Chair of the Young Ag Professionals Committee. Thanks again for being here, Emily.
Thank you so much.
Sometimes out here, you have to speak loudly.
Our voice alone may not have as much impact as we would like, but my voice
can be heard and influential through membership in Ohio Farm Bureau.
My voice, along with tens of thousands of Ohioans,
makes a difference when it comes to legislation, regulation, or litigation that can be positive or potentially harmful to those of us in the agriculture community.
Become a member today at ohiofarmbureau.org.
Because there is strength and members.
At Farm Bureau, investing in the future means investing in our rising leaders. Through programs such as the Young Ag Professionals and AgriPOWER, we're providing our next leaders the skills, experiences, and connections they need to lead agriculture forward. Recently, many of our Young Ag Professionals and the current AgriPOWER class traveled to Washington, D.C. to put advocacy into action and to meet with policymakers. Joining us today is Adam Sharp, Executive Vice President, to talk about the recent trip and why trips like this are so important. Welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Now, just to start, can you kind of share, why these kinds of trips are so important? Maybe some insight to what this trip to DC kind of brought this year.
Yeah, these trips, we do several of these a year, both with kind of our more seasoned leaders, county presidents or county officers, and then this other trip, which is really focused on our younger leaders, those folks who are up and coming, right? We'll say these are folks who are either moving into leadership roles already or plan to. Or sometimes, oftentimes, it might be their first time going with Farm Bureau on an event to advocate for agriculture. So you'll get kind of a nice range of people on these trips. The Young Ag Professionals is who this group was predominantly, but then also we take a leadership group along with this too. So the AgriPOWER leadership group. So it's a nice mix of both of those folks. The YAP, of course, are 18 to 35-year-olds. The AgriPOWER doesn't have an age limit, but tends to also be kind of mid-career or younger career folks. So for them, a lot of times it's both learning how to advocate, learning the processes of Washington, D.C. When we ask these folks, and I love asking them this all the time on the trip, I say, raise your hand, right, if this is your first time to Washington, D.C. And there's always a couple of them. It's their very first time. Others, it's their first time in a long time. So they might have been there a few years ago, but it was with 4-H or FFA or their 8th grade trip, right? So they've been to DC. They've seen the monuments. They might have went in the Capitol or something, but they haven't been there to advocate for themselves, for agriculture, for farmers. So it's really about showing them, hey, here's how the city works. When we're talking about advocating and when we're talking about doing the business of Farm Bureau, which is what we do, right? It's being the voice of the farmer. So we talk to them about issues so that they feel comfortable with issues, but then we also really stress for them, one of the most important parts is share your story. You don't have to remember all the facts and figures. Just tell your story. How do these things impact you, your family, your farm, your community, other of your friends and neighbors and family that are involved in agriculture? So getting them comfortable with what we're doing there as far as telling the story, and then how to conduct your meeting. So we have them sit down and literally talk about, how you're going to organize your meeting with either the legislature themselves or one of their staff people. And we talk to them about how it's important, no matter which you get, either audience is very, very important, whether it's the staff person or whether it's the legislature themselves. And typically we get, 2/3 of them probably meet with the legislature, and maybe 1/3 of them with staff. It just depends on the year. But we tell them, a lot of those staff folks, that's the person who's the expert on the staff with that member of Congress that is going to be telling that member of Congress, hey, here's what we know about the issue. So whatever you share with them is going to be directly in the ear of that legislature. So it matters. It's important. Plus, we never know those staff go. And I can give you story after story, right, of folks who started off as legislative staff on Capitol Hill. And as they became instrumental for that congressional member, as far as their influence, as that member maybe moves into a chairmanship in a committee or an important committee that we care about, suddenly that staff person becomes really valuable for us to know. Or that staff person moves over to an administration and takes a role that's very important, or they move into another organization, or maybe even they move to Farm Bureau and take a job. So these are folks that we always want to build relationships with, because very often they move into another spot where they're equally somebody that we want to know, and we want to build a good relationship with them. So we talk to these folks their first time to DC, typically to lobby about all these dynamics, right, and how to just relax, have fun with it. But also to, it's a very important part of what we do to advocate and to bring the message of Ohio farmers to Washington, D.C.
Now, when all of our young members in our AgriPOWER class were meeting with lawmakers, legislative staff, or leaders of different agencies, what were some of the priority issues that came up, or what were some of the things or stories that they would share from their farm to kind of with these lawmakers and people that are going to make that change?
Yeah. Right now, of course, this trip this year, it was a pretty easy thing, right, for our folks to go straight to the farm economy, right? They needed to talk about the farm economy because it's the troubles that we're having, right? So whether you're talking about rain all summer and then drought, and then what that has meant to our producers, when you talk about low commodity prices, when you talk about high input prices, troubles with trade, so. Farm economy was top of the list that they were talking about. Just what is the status? What's currently going on in farm country in Ohio is very important, and it's important to talk to the members about that. And we tell them because you could have, like last year, where almost the rest of the Midwest had good weather, had very good growing conditions, but we didn't. Southern Ohio, and then ultimately lots of Ohio had a really severe drought. But interestingly, most of our neighbor states and all the way across the Midwest did not. So you got to talk to them, about what's happening locally, because oftentimes our members of Congress don't know. They don't know all of that, and they don't know what it means to you as on your farm or in your community. So that's a big deal. So bring it down, talk about the farm economy. That was a big part of it. I mentioned trade as part of that, but trade in general was one of the topics as well. So whether it's domestic markets or international markets, we need stability, we need markets, and we need to make sure we're doing the work we can in that space. Another issue is Farm Bill and farm policy. The big, beautiful bill, as we really appreciate, Congress put a lot of components of a Farm Bill in there. So they updated some of the risk management portions of that, so the PLC and ARC. So there was updating the reference prices into some of the Farm Bill key programs that matter to farmers, but the rest of the Farm Bill didn't get done. So when you get into conservation, a lot of the conservation, some got done in there. A lot of conservation programs, research, et cetera. Those things didn't get touched. So we talked about Farm Bill 2.0. So the rest of the Farm Bill package needs to get done. So we talked about that piece as well as a continuing component of work that needs to happen. And then of course we always tell them, like with Big Beautiful Bill, thank your member. It's not always go in with the ask. It's go in and also, hey, thank you for the work you did on Big Beautiful Bill, because the tax provisions in there, the Farm Bill provisions in there, great stuff. We needed it. So make sure you thank members too for good work when they do it. Too many times people want to go into Congress and just they want to scream and shout. They want to raise and have a hard time about give members of Congress a hard time about something that's not done. No, I mean, they're people too, whether you want to admit it or not, right? These are people too that we want to build a great relationship with, and they live in their district, right? So they're right there. They're one of your neighbors, and treating them as such is important because I think we've lost a little bit of that civility. So I think when our members go in and have just hopefully a much a pleasant conversation with them, it might be very direct about important issues. But it is a respectful conversation, and it's sharing information. And we often tell them a lot of times they don't have all the information. Share with them the stories. Tell them what's happening with you and your farm, because if they get a good story from you, that tells the story of the issue, they'll reshare it. I mean, we can give you example after example of members of Congress. They sit there and they go, "Hey, yeah. Ex member from my district just told me the other day in the office about this important piece of policy that is impacting them because it hasn't been addressed yet. And here's how." And that is invaluable. So give them the stories that they can share. It's a big deal. Respectful, and then thank them. Tell them thank you, and they do good work. And they did some really good work in the big beautiful bill, frankly, for Ohio agriculture. A lot of good stuff in there.
I think you definitely hit the biggest point when it comes to advocacy, right? Is our stories from the farm is the most powerful tool we have in our toolbox, right? Because they want to hear what's going on. And like you said, a lot of times they may just not have that information, or they may not know how this piece of legislation is going to affect their constituents or their neighbors down the road. So just, getting to share the information along with the stories. So that way they have that as they're working with other lawmakers to find out what's the best solution, not just for Ohio, but for the country as well.
Yeah, facts and figures are great, and it's good if you have them and you want to share them. That's good stuff. But typically, when you see a member of Congress and you're having these conversations with them, and then you go back to the district, I can't tell you how many times in hearings or in district meetings or when they're in other meetings on Capitol Hill in front of groups, you'll hear them repeat a story they heard from one of their constituents, something that was impactful that you could tell. It's like, oh, yep, they heard a really good story that happened in their district. And that's what they get. You can give them the best fact sheet in the world, but man, it's that human interest story that mattered, that stuck with them. So it's important.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Now, as a leader of Farm Bureau, why do you see these trips so important, both on the grassroots structure side, but also as we're empowering our young leaders?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it comes down to leadership development, and for our young ag professionals, for our AgriPOWER leadership group, both groups, they're learning a lot of things about leadership, as we all always are. But they're learning how to talk, but also listen, right? To actively listen. So when you're in these meetings, or when you're even just sitting down with your other folks who are in your congressional district, and you're getting ready to go in for the meeting, just listening to them to hear their perspectives on these issues and what they want to talk about. So actively listening, being positive, being solution oriented. Here's what we'd like you to do, and you can walk through, here's things that will be helpful to us. Have a good drive, have a good energy about you, but don't, but don't be rude, don't be disrespectful, right? I think, build that relationship with people is absolutely critical. So building those relationships is a big deal. Working hard at the issues, these things also aren't easy. You're not going to do one meeting and assume that the problem's going to get fixed. So part of this too is expectations. You got to, you learn to build a relationship with the lawmakers. Keep that relationship up, so it's not just one and done. When they come back to the district, find time to go to that fundraiser, find time to go to that meet and greet, invite them to come to your county farm bureau meeting. So keep the conversation going with them and their staff. Very important. So we talk a lot about that. We talk about being humble, showing, talking to them about caring about the industry, and then also for them to be prepared, when they go into the meeting. So don't, so plan, be prepared. We tell them, organize who's going to talk about what, so when you're sitting there in your pre-meeting, talk with your fellow constituents, right, from that district, your other farm bureau members, who's going to cover what issues, right? Who's going to kind of open the meeting? Who's going to talk about what? And that way you can utilize your time, because they also are on a time crunch. You got to be respectful of their time. Votes are happening. They're getting called into other meetings. Things are happening that are out of their control schedule-wise all day long when they're on Capitol Hill. So you might end up with one of them for 5 minutes. So you better be efficient, and then the next individual, you might have an hour. You never know, right? So you just got to be prepared to be as efficient as you can be, or if there's more time, great, take it, and do that, but be respectful of the time and understand that they're on time crunch. So I think all those things are very, very important. It's important for the advocating, but it's important for these individuals who come on the trip to learn and grow as leaders.
You mentioned that a lot of our members that were on this trip are more on the younger side, right? The 18 to 35, and some of our AgriPOWER class are that mid-career point. What do you think these lawmakers and our congressional leaders thought when they saw this group of young people walk into their office ready to advocate for agriculture?
Yeah, I think, we all know the stats. We hear the stats all the time about the average age of the farmers in their 60s or around 60 years old. So I think there's natural tendency oftentimes for others to think of agriculture as being an older population of people like myself. But the reality is, right, we have a lot of young people in agriculture, in farming, who want to be farming, who want to be in this industry, and a lot of them who are, and they're just starting off their careers. They're just starting off the work with their family farm. They're starting to maybe transition to take over parts or all of the family farm, or buy or start their first farming business. So you got all these young people. So when you hear about these issues from the face of a younger person saying, "Hey, I'm optimistic about this industry. I want to be in this industry for the next 30, 40, 50 years." That's meaningful, and that's different than oftentimes what lawmakers are expecting, right? And also, when you have so many young men and women who come in to talk about just optimistically the industry itself, it's, hey, yeah, there's things that Congress can always help with. But also remember that these policies that we put in place on Capitol Hill, we want them to benefit, the current community, and then all of us, right, who are coming in as younger people into this industry for the long haul. So let's make good policy, right? Let's make good decisions in the policy space. So we want to make sure that those messages are brought forward. And so that's just a bit of a different face, right, than oftentimes what lawmakers see when they think about agriculture. So it's fun to watch that reaction typically from lawmakers. They enjoy, I think, oftentimes even more often speaking to younger people. I think that's something that they also get a bit of a charge out of, to see that kind of energy from, in a group that's coming in that's just coming into an industry or just really starting to grow professionally in the industry. I think it's exciting for them too. So it's always a fun trip to do for all of those reasons, and something that I think is also quite effective, for the way we advocate for the industry.
To zoom out here a bit and kind of to wrap us up, why do you think it's so important to empower our young leaders, specifically in Farm Bureau?
Well, I think the most important reason is because we need leaders for the future, right? And the future is now. The future is now. So, we got so many good younger people involved in Farm Bureau, but from that 18 to 35 year group, and even beyond that, because I'll still say younger still incorporates people well past 35. It's important for Farm Bureau as an organization, very selfishly, because we are who we are. This organization is about being the voice for farmers, all farmers generally, right? We're a general farm organization, not one particular sector of agriculture, for farmers. And in order to continue that tradition over 100 years now, right? We're a little over 100 years old. We need the next generation, right? To learn to be a good advocate for themselves and for the industry, right? So it's always important, right? It's a parade of people, right? That over time are coming into an organization like Farm Bureau and learning, growing, and becoming leaders, and that's what we always need, right? We always need good people to represent our membership. Because ultimately Farm Bureau is here for one reason and one reason only, and that's for representing our members and advocating for our members' needs. And as we can get and grow younger folks to do that over time, they're going to be really, really effective at it. And oftentimes they come in and they're darn good at it to start with, which makes it even easier. But we all know, right? We all learn something new every day. And these trips they're all learning. We're all learning. So it's always a fun thing to do for us to learn more and then to learn to be more effective leaders.
Adam Shar, Executive Vice President for Ohio Farm Bureau. Thanks again for joining, Adam.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it. Thank you much.
Yeah.
Find previous podcasts at ohiofarmbureau.org and search podcasts.